This is chapter 20 on land use planning and engineering geology. We're going to be starting with land use planning today. Here's a map showing population growth and density. Um, so just about everywhere. I mean, the greens here are what, 20% or more growth. So you don't see as much growth in the East Coast, but the East Coast is already pretty full, I suppose, is what we're showing here. But the population just keeps getting larger and larger. And that's not going to stop. And a lot of that is like thanks to like our better medicine and standards of living. People just don't die like they used to. You know, back in the day, people would have like 10 kids, but only two of them would live to be an adult. That just doesn't happen anymore, which is wonderful, but now we're kind of, running out of room. So it's important that we do land use planning. So let's just say let's say you have a little town or whatever, and there's just, one kind of area that maybe has soil really good for farmland. And maybe it's the only area that has that really good soil for farming. You don't really want to have somebody come and pave over that and build like a strip mall or an amusement park or anything. Then where are you going to farm? So it's important that we recognize the potential of that land and save that for farming because we all need food to eat and you can build a mall or an amusement park, other places that maybe you don't need that specific soil type and dangers as well. Maybe we don't want to put a whole bunch of homes underneath a mountain that's likely going to have a large landslide or right across a fault zone. Maybe you don't want to build the amusement park on a fault zone, or a skyscraper on a fault zone, but you can't have the uh, grazing land there. So it's important that we just take these needs for the entire community into account and plan this out to the best of our knowledge. Obviously, we don't know everything about every inch of land. But here is land use planning. So you can see we have lots of forest, which is good. Federal land, cropland, and then range. So these are probably, I think by range, they're meaning like pasture land for cows and stuff. And then developed is actually very small, but that's what most of our current development is for, like homes and things. And you can see that here in the net changes. We've got a lot more developed land. So these are our malls and homes and things. And we actually have a lot less cropland. So that's kind of scary because we have more people, less food. And excuse me. Um, Land use options. So it's wise to give a parcel of land more than one use if you can. And so there are a couple ways to do that. There's multiple use where you can use it for two things at once. Um, Textbook is the example of like pasture land and wind farm. You can have more than one use on the same parcel of land. The cows can just walk around. The windmills, that's fine. Um, See, it says parks or green areas can be used for recreation or to catch fresh water during a storm and allow it to infiltrate into the groundwater, especially in an urban area where maybe you have a lot of pavement over the ground. You're not letting aquifers recharge, so you can use the parks as recharge areas. And there's sequential use, so you can't use it at the same time. But when the first use is done, then you can use it for a second purpose. Here are a couple of pictures. This is an old quarry that's been turned into a golf course, and with where they have cut into the rock, it kind of gives it a pretty little mountain feel. And then this is an old mine that is now an underground museum. The book talks about in Kansas how there are like office buildings and things, in old mines. Although it's, I think, office buildings for the mining company, but still, that's still pretty smart for the mining company. And I'm sure it saved them a lot of money from having to go buy land elsewhere for their office buildings. Um, let's see, this is mines are used to provide commodities found in the subsurface, sanitary waste dump storage, or infill parks. I actually think out in Western Kentucky, some of the old coal mines were used as like sewage waste dumps. So it's very common. Then there's the federal land. So federal lands fall into two categories. One is for preservation, which are your national parks and wilderness areas, and the other is lands intended for multiple compatible land uses. So you can maybe graze and have drilling for oil, or maybe you can log and have some mining at the same time. I think even in these lands, like your this is like your Bureau of Land Management, your BLM, maybe your Forest Service. The Forest Service does allow logging, but it's very smart logging. They just don't let people come and like tear down all the trees, in an area. Um, but there is some kind of preservation associated with that because, like with the logging, it like I called it smart logging, and I'm not like a arborist or anything. Um, but they don't just allow the complete removal of everything. So in a way that itself is still preservation. Maps is a planning tool. So the most useful thing in planning, you get your data, what is the soil type, where are the faults, where are the landslides, and you map them out, and then it just makes planning a lot easier. And so GIS, so you can think ArcMap, even Google Earth have become very important tools. I can't imagine before all of this how they would do this. But they look at things like the topography, bedrock geology, surface materials, soils, depth to groundwater, vegetation, population information, location of fault zones, floodplains, and then a lot more. And then when you map it out, you can just kind of see everything at once and try to avoid hazards and give like I said, if something's best for farming, give that to farming land. So geographic information systems, again, you can think like ArcMap, or now I guess it's ArcPro, whatever. The ArcGIS program is the most common one, but there are others. And allow planners to manipulate the data and see and use what data is useful to a planning task while minimizing or obscuring unimportant data. You can see different layers of information. So here are the different layers. And so we have like this one shows faults, this one shows where there's landslides. This is cliff erosion, which is pretty much all along the edge. I'm not sure why you need a map of that. I guess this is showing where it's happened or where it's worst. And what does that say? Oh, I have a typo. Slope angles here. So where it's really steep. Hard to construct things where it's really steep. Actually, I'm going to skip to this one next. Here is, so you can take those different layers and you can digitize them and give them values. And so here's an example of where you can say, okay, where is it clay soil? So you can see here it's like saying yes or giving ones to where there's clay soil. Where is it steep? Up here. Where is there a stream? Right in here. And then you give these little squares. So you make a little grid on the map, and then each little grid, either yes or no. And then you can kind of add them up or give them values. Maybe you don't really care so much if it's clay soil, so it's a low value, but you really care if it's steep. You really can't construct anything if it's too steep. So that's a higher value. And so it goes, and then you can add these all up and get this map of where it's good and bad, and that takes all of your inputs into consideration. And then here is that resulting map of where it's favorable or not favorable. Oh, and then I need to go back. Here is just a land cover of the different land uses right now, locations, so you can see we've got some forests. What is this? This is scrub, so that's kind of like your deserty, tumbleweed kind of stuff. This dark brown looks like it's cultivated crops. Yellow pastures, light green forest. Um, and so that's what we currently look like here. This is land cover, not necessarily land use, but just the different areas, I guess, like if it's a wetland or not. Not necessarily. And then we do have some developed, but this isn't saying like, okay, this is going to be farmland or this is going to be an amusement park. All right, and that is it. Next, we can move on to engineering geology.